Good evening and welcome to the Omnibus Roundtable television show. This evening we have a special guest. We have Rev Anthony Williams, and we have two of our wonderful co-hosts, Miss Naima Latif and Miss Margot Richmond. Welcome to the show. Pastor, how are you?
Ms. Carter, it is indeed an honor to be with you and your distinguished guest.
Thank you, sir. It's an honor to have you on. We understand that you are running for U.S. Senator.
Well, it's my goal by way of petition to get on the ballot to be able to participate in the primary first and foremost.
All
And
right.
it's one step at a time. You have to get the signatures to get on the ballot. Then you're eligible to participate in the primary. So that's my goal thus far for the seat that belongs to the people of the state of Illinois, which is United States Senator.
How many petitions do you have to get?
Yeah, how many signatures and when is the primary?
We need, well, for Republican, you need 3,400 plus.
So tell us a little bit about what your platform initiatives would be.
Well, my primary focus for running for U.S. Senate is to address the issue of violence as a public health crisis.
Mm-hmm.
All that's going on right now, I worked in conjunction with lawmakers and other citizens to get a bill passed. I introduced Pritzker to sign a bill on April 27, 2021, the Illinois Health Reform Bill, House Bill 158.
It's been a bloody start to 2021. Chicago recorded 131 homicides in the first 3 months of the year. That's the deadliest first quarter since 2017. Now a measure sitting on Governor J.B. Pritzker's desk, H.R. 158, declares violence a public health crisis with directives for state agencies to identify high violence areas. The bill also takes aim at racial inequities in the state's healthcare system. Joining us to discuss the legislation and its potential impact are State Senator Mike Simmons, a co-sponsor of the bill and whose district includes neighborhoods on Chicago's far north side, and Rev Anthony Williams of King International Ministries. Rev Williams is named in the bill and has worked to classify violence as a public health crisis for more than a decade. He lost his own son to gun violence in 2018. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on Chicago Tonight. Senator Simmons, let's start with you, please. How will this bill tackle those inequities in the state's healthcare system?
Well, first, Brandis, I want to say thank you to State Senator Maddie Hunter, who was the lead sponsor on this legislation, Camille Lilly over on the House side, and the entire Black Legislative Caucus, with which I am proud to be a member. This legislation was the first major piece of legislation that I voted on as a state senator. As most of you know, I've not been in this seat for even 2 months at this point, and so it was great legislation for me to start out on. And what this bill does is it does a number of things. It's a pretty big measure, but a couple of key points. It requires that state agencies better coordinate healthcare across a very fragmented system, and that's going to be important for healthcare outcomes, particularly when we talk about disparities for racial groups and for people living with mental health conditions. It also requires that there's a racial impact note that's designated in terms of the impact of legislation that is moving through the General Assembly and the enforcement agencies that are in charge of implementing that policy. And so having that racial impact note will get us to a point where we actually have some meat on the bones and some teeth in terms of what we mean when we talk about breaking through institutional racism in our systems.
And Reverend Williams, as we mentioned, sadly, you lost your son to gun violence 3 years ago. How did that tragedy mobilize you and the anti-violence community work that you do?
Well, the citizens just felt that we had to acknowledge the fact that violence is a public health crisis, and it is. The CDC has said that violence is also a pandemic and a public health crisis. And I want to congratulate our citizens in Illinois and our state lawmakers. We're the first state in the union to talk in terms of identifying and acknowledging that violence is a public health crisis, and we can't continue to live with abnormal behavior anymore.
And Reverend Williams, one of the things that this measure would do is direct state agencies like the Illinois Departments of Public Health and Human Services to embark on a study that would identify high violence communities for program funding as well as economic development. Which communities do you think would benefit from that kind of investment?
You can start off with my old neighborhood, Inglewood. You could also take the southern suburbs like Dalton, Roseland, Woodlawn, Lawndale. And so East St. Louis, it's enough to go around in terms of dealing with this pandemic of violence.
What kind of programming and economic development would you like to see for those communities?
Well, I mean, when you talk to equity, fairness, the resources going to the proper people who have measurements to show proof that they're dealing with the issue of violence, preventative programs that we need so badly.
And Senator Simmons, several of your colleagues opposing this measure have cited fiscal concerns amid the state's budget woes, of course, during a very challenging fiscal year. But measures like funding for violent communities is subject to appropriation by the General Assembly. Do you think your colleagues will follow through?
You know, the intention is absolutely to follow through, right? I mean, we can't solve this epidemic of violence in this city, in this state, and across the country if we're not willing to put our money where our mouths are. And we know that in many instances that the programs that are required to combat violence, the number of mentors that we need for our young people, the number of mental health professionals that we need to have deployed when we have people that are in crisis, where if we don't have that intervention, the outcome is likely to be a violent one. When we don't have those systemic responses in place for people that are in pain, right, then we're not going to be able to turn the tide on any of these issues. And so, you know, like I said, I'm new to the General Assembly and I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but I think that the intention is there to, you know, break through on these issues. I mean, we as the Reverend said, we've been talking about this issue for years, right? Defining violence as a public health emergency and having a public health epidemiological response to the issue is really important if we're going to actually make systemic progress on reducing violence across the board.
And Senator, you say you're new to the General Assembly, but we know you're not new to Chicago. What do you think are some of the root causes that lead to violence in the city?
Right, and I'm glad, that's a great question. I mean, a lot of this is just, we're talking about, you know, in the 7th district where I'm the state senator, it's economic violence. We're talking about families who are working 2 and 3 jobs, who are expected to be able to take care of their families, and they can't, right? They don't have health insurance. They're not able to put food on the table. This is the only country where we have people working 40 and 50 hours a week, and we've become normalized to the idea that they should be able to struggle and not be able to actually take care of themselves, not be able to pay their bills. And so that's a big issue when we talk about returning citizens in my district and many of the communities that the Reverend talked about, who come back into the communities and they're not able to find work, or they go through job placement programs where the outcomes are just not there. 6 months later, 12 months later, 2 years later, these people are still not employed. That's a big problem. And so we've got to have a structural response to those types of issues.
And we're currently, as we mentioned earlier, seeing this very dramatic spike in violence. The first quarter of 2021 with 131 killings recorded, the deadliest since 2017. Reverend Williams, do you fear that these numbers will only get worse, especially as we get into the summer months when violence is notoriously worse?
It's so important that we push. That's why this bill is so important. Civility is so sorely needed. Civility. We had to uncool violence. Violence ain't cool. And so civility is so important. That's what this bill does. Is it educates. It deals with collaboration. You're talking about structural violence, institutional violence. Civility. Civility is key in redirecting the funding to those agencies who are out there with boots on the ground. This is an intelligent piece of legislation. It is the vaccine. It is the vaccine to the violence that's occurring in Illinois. Once we pass an Illinois impact to public policies, then we go federal and we put it on President Joe Biden's desk.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. My thanks to Reverend Anthony Williams and State Senator Mike Simmons for joining us.
The CDC is called violence of public health crises. The medical community has deemed violence as a disease, but not a contagion. Mm-hmm. So we are sandwiched in between 2 viruses. That's COVID-19 and violence. And so we've got to address it because, you know, all of us are are older adults, and I never fathomed the idea and the thought of seeing the kind of violence I'm seeing now. I mean, in Inglewood the other day, a a a 15-year-old child
Yes.
was shot 24 times.
24 times.
24 times. 24 times. You know, I mean, we become anesthetized and numb to the type of violence that's occurring. We see the spike of violence everywhere, and it's time to address it properly. And we can address it properly. The tools are in place, but when I deal with the issue of violence, I deal with structural violence. America was built on two things: genocide and slavery.
Ooh.
So there's an implosion that's taking place.
Yeah.
And any social scientist will tell you there's an implosion that's taking place. So I'm running to address the issue of violence as a public health crisis, because no one is safe despite your social, economic, gender, etc. background. So civilization cannot go forward with this type of behavior. So that's my key platform. And so it affects all of our structures: economics, politics, etc. It's across the board. And so
Yes.
we've got to educate people. We need collaboration. We need civility, which is key. And we need public policies and redirecting the funding in the proper places. That's the reflection of House Bill 158, which was appropriated at $38 billion.
Okay.
50 million in the pot. And that's still a ongoing struggle because Pritzker is not properly executing the bill right. And citizens need to know that. This bill was designed to make the residents of the state of Illinois safe. So that's my number one concern in terms of why I'm running to address the issue of violence. Now, the second thing is that it's time to also to address the issue of reparations. See, when you talk about historical violence, that's why it's so important that American descendants of slavery receive their reparations. There's no debate on this issue of violence. And so it's time to be realistic and address the issue intelligently.
Makes sense to me.
Pastor Williams, the money that would be allocated to spend as a result of the passage of this legislation, where would you spend it to prevent the kind of people who did the shooting, such as the one that shot this 15-year-old boy 24 times? How would that money be spent to prevent that action from happening?
Well, that bill was designed, first of all, to deal with all aspects, of our lives. And number one, starting with mental health. We all see what's happening. The high propensity of mental illness across the board. So you're talking about in the healthcare industry, you're talking about in education, you're talking about in social service, and there are other avenues. Thus far, all I was able to do as a citizen to do was to get it passed. But now it has to be the enforcement of the law. So that's still a struggle. And it came in a way that, let me back up and say this. This bill, citizens have to demand that House Bill 158 be properly enforced. Because if as far as I'm concerned with Pritzker, he's disingenuous, and he would do what you call a closet veto on this bill if there's no public outcry. It's just like, I give a historical example. When civil rights leadership like Dr. King and others broke down the Iron Curtain of American apartheid, segregation, if they don't enforce, we don't have to ride on the back of the bus. We still be riding on the back of the bus.
Right.
When a bill is passed, it has to be enforced, and citizens
Yes.
have to be engaged too. I mean, let's be realistic. Let's talk real. There's a potential war that is taking place right now in Europe, Ukraine, and Russia. But if that conflict is not dealt with, there is a looming World War III. We don't want to
Yes.
go. Violence serves no purpose. It is a mindless menace and it serves no purpose. But yet, the irony and the trickery of this demon of violence, this leviathan of violence, it is over $1 trillion industry. Violence is big business.
Yes, it is.
So
Prison.
I'm not
Damn.
naive. I'm not naive about what this demon is. And then when I put on my theological hat, violence is Satan's greatest weapon. I come to
Yes,
steal, kill, rob, and destroy.
that's right.
So my primary focus is continue to tell people, look, we cannot live like this anymore. With violence, no one is safe. And it's not about doing some asinine little thing, or we've got to deal with the bigger picture of violence. And that's the fact that we've got to put together a legislative process
That's
going
right.
to help all of our citizens. We've done it at a small scale in the state of Illinois. It can go forth nationally, but it's getting these elected officials to do with their job, but citizens have to push. I mean, once again, I lost my son, Nehemiah, which you knew, if you remember
Yes.
Nehemiah 1,
Yes.
I lost him to violence.
Yes. I
Closest
lost
thing,
my grandson too, just 8 months ago to
my
violence.
God.
He shot in the heart, shot in the chest, and died. Never
And,
made it to the hospital.
and the bottom line is, look at the impact it has. Look at it. Look, it creates instantly, not post-traumatic stress,
Right.
but current traumatic stress.
That's right.
And we have thousands of people in this nation that are suffering from current traumatic stress. You got to be current in order to be post. So we have a problem. The problem can be addressed, and that's one of the reasons why I'm running for civility. We're insane out here.
Yeah.
We're insane.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Pastor Williams, then, based on what you just said, what are the businesses that are profiting from violence that might be resistance to change things as they are?
Honestly speaking, the whole social strata, all of our social systems function from violence. All of our systems, whether it's education, whether it's healthcare, whether it's in politics, whether it's in economic, it is a big business.
It's
And
a business.
that's why we need civility. Collaboration is just simply means you acknowledge the fact that your systems have violent tendencies. We had to have a restructuring of our social systems, whether we like it or not, because we're facing a major implosion. And I say to Black folks, if America falls, guess what? You're falling right with it.
That's right.
So I encourage people right now, particularly Black folks in this country, use your citizenship card to the hilt. Our people built this nation for free, and we must be the benefactors and the beneficiaries of this new America, which we will have a major part in helping to shape and develop it. But until we address this issue of violence, the status quo tries to blame this outbreak, this implosion on our community. You look at what's happening downtown. It's just a case of the chickens coming home to roost right now.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we just need to intelligently sit back and say, you know what? We have got to work towards healing. We've got to work towards reconciliation, but we must be truthful and acknowledge the fact that this leviathan of violence is going to destroy all of us, and I don't care who you are.
That's right.
I did want to ask, when is the primary? What's the date for the primary election?
I think the primary is in it's in June. I think it's June
28th. June 28th. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm going to be posting in the next couple of days. We're going to do a major petition drive next Saturday. I'm going to pick a location, post it where people can come by and sign the petition, because it's been a difficult task, to get signatures because of the fact that we're dealing with COVID.
Right. You
Uh,
can't go door to door and
door to door.
interact it like before. And
And
people
you
aren't
can't.
gathering.
No, no, and if you don't have the resources, it's difficult to get the signatures. But you had to be creative, like I've been, to find creative ways. And I want to thank my daughter Sharon has launched the Illinois Black Women's Petition Drive for myself for U.S. Senate. So
We got a chance to see that. Yeah, we got a chance to see that.
It's picking up steam. And you know, I email people petitions, they print them out, they get people to sign. If I get one petition, two petitions, doesn't matter. That's one petition with signatures that I didn't have prior. So I'm very grateful for this, but at the same time, for people to see that they can see my reasoning for running is based on the fact that I've done the work. It's just there. I mean, the evidence is there. I mean, I was fortunate and blessed to get a bill passed. Imagine what I would do as a senator. Just imagine what I would do as a senator.
So now where does your area extend to? How far south?
The whole state,
north?
the whole state of Illinois.
So
you know,
okay.
It's all the state of Illinois. Both U.S. senators are given the governance of the entire state.
Oh, okay.
Now, there's no geographical boundaries, you know, but they both govern the entire state.
Well, I have one question, and that question is, you are in the ministry, and with all of the churches, synagogues, and all of the rest of it, and I'm agreeing that there is a crisis because I've been involved with working with pregnant women, newborn babies. But however, we see the violence continuously, so it has to affect everybody that sits in any form of a congregation, big, small, by any means, that their children are affected because these children are coming out of these people's household. And so if nothing else, people blame the church all the time and blame the synagogues, is that they're coming together, they're sitting. It hurts me to hear it because all of my people are in the ministry. So they all have churches. So I'm constantly having group meetings with my family from here to Arkansas to Tacoma, Washington, and we're on calls talking to our children. But however, I work as a substitute teacher, and I'm telling you, it's like the children come off the school buses coming in a rage.
Yes.
And
yes.
it's very difficult to try to get them to go into a mental health facility because they don't want that stigma on I'm crazy. And so I'm praying that while you're running this race, the disinformation actually gets out because it hits home, because I used to be a troubled youth. I grew up partially in Henry Horner, then Dearborn Homes, then to Woodlawn. And I was fortunate enough to be able to get somebody that thought, let me talk to Margot and see if I can change some things. So we need that help as mothers, as aunties. You know, my son is 46 years old right now. So, you know, we're out of the woods with him. He's very successful. But however, on a day-to-day basis, we're still working with children that are sick in the schools. They're hurting. They're coming to school very disruptive. I just got off the phone before we called you, and the lady said, before she knows, Margot, I think I done lost my job. Can you help me? She said a little girl was just snatching off tissue off of there. And she told her, please, baby, stop. Don't do that. And she kept on and she said, Margot, before I knew it, the girl called me the B word. And before I knew it, I hit her hands. And she said, you know, I had to go make a report because we're not supposed to put our hands on her. So, you know, we need to know beyond this call, we need to be able to take this to the next level.
Well, all you all had to do, you know, and this is where I recognize the power, particularly in our Black women. Let's be realistic about our community. If you continue to weaken the Black woman, then you have no family. Let's be clear. I mean, there's a deliberate target at the Black woman, but now everything has boomerang. If you women put the pressure of God on Pritzker regarding House Bill 158, why not? How come it's not being enforced? The fact that Pritzker continues to put emphasis on gun violence. Gun violence is a symptom of structural violence. Domestic violence is a symptom. It is structural. It is built in the DNA of the structures of America. There has to be a reconfiguration in terms of how our structures operate. And that's not complex. It's legislation that moves the needle. This is America allegedly is a nation of laws, whether it's a good law or a bad law, but it's legislation that moves the needle. Conversation gets it started, but it's laws. I mean, right now in Springfield, they make laws that affect all of our lives. But what happens, our elected officials, we don't hold them accountable and make them do their job. So we have problem at the problem at the problem at the problem, and they're still collecting free paychecks. Now, some of them work hard, I guess, but I mean, with the exception of, and I don't want to call any names, but I'll call an exceptional representative, LaShawn Ford, does great work on behalf of the citizens of Illinois, but he makes it no secret about his concern and love from the community which he comes from, which is the Black community. So the tools are in place. You just have to know where to find the tools to address the issue. And right now, that bill, House Bill 158, it's not the end all, but what it does is address the issues exactly as you expressed it. So we got to just keep going.
I go back to that question again. You are clergy. You represent the spiritual community. That in itself has numbers that's unlimited. So how do we approach that situation?
Well,
here in Illinois.
Well,
because if that bill was passed, then they should be aware of it, or we need to do something to rally around getting it to them.
Well, here's what's happened. I'm realistic about the church. And I'm talking about, I look at America, the world, the church right now is sitting by the drain. And
the church is us, individuals.
Yeah, I know, but I know, but it's sitting by the drain. You know, people like you are letting your light shine. But, I don't operate in brick and mortar. I just, as a minister of Jesus Christ, I just do the best I can. I share information. I'm in the United Church of Christ. My denomination I'm a part of, they talked about, what great work you did in getting this bill passed. But when I need you to stand, you're waffling. So, I've never waited on anybody to encourage me to do anything. I just say, well, I take the little red rooster approach or the little red hen approach and do what I have to do. And so I just try to be an example and let my light shine. I have no criticism of anyone, but I'm not playing with this issue because all of our lives are at stake. All of our faith-based communities need to be more engaging because God expects us to help ourselves here on this earth. So I just do the best I can with what I got.
So Pastor Anthony Williams, a few days ago, we watched a video of a 6-year-old girl who was handcuffed by police and put in a squad car because she was acting out in school. Maybe even a situation like what Margot just described. And people were outraged, but then the other hand was she was out of control.
Yes.
And so when we have these situations with our children that are obviously responding to something stressful happening in their homes, how do we get to the root of the problem, which is what's happening in the home, whether it be what they're experiencing with their parents, the stress the parents may be under? The whole thing is a mental health crisis, but all of it evolves out of the homes. And like Margot was saying, people don't want the stigma of going to a mental health facility. Is there a way that other institutions, such as our spiritual communities, can provide help to those families or guidance to those families so that the behavior that's happening in the home is not creating mental health issues for the children coming out of that home And then because of the structure that teachers are under, they can't do anything when a child acts out, but call police, who overreact and don't act like parents, they act like law enforcement, which further traumatizes the child. So we got to stop that cycle. How do we get to the people in the home with the kind of teaching of civility that you talk about that can end the cycle of violence?
I think each community has to put together their own paradigm models to be able to address the issues. I mean, if there's issues in a Hispanic home, I don't know how to engage that. You know, I have an understanding as human to human in terms of what's happening, because trauma affects us all across the board. But I think that the faith-based leaders, it would be nice, whether they're Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, Jewish, could have dialogue. Look, we're going to either all swim together, we're going to sink together. I think that key suggestions coming from the community, as you laid out, sister, are very important, because no one has all the answers. You know, what I did was, when my son got killed, I was already dealing with the issue of violence. In 2004, I got a grant to study violence, and I talked to representatives then about hearings. They looked at me and laughed like I was talking in Chinese. Fast forward 2018, when my son got killed, I was catapulted into the eye of the hurricane. At that time, I was pastoring in Berwyn, an all-white church I was pastoring. The state representative, Lisa Hernandez, read a story that I had written in the Chicago Crusader, A Grieving Father's Response to Violence. So she started talking to me. I said, you know, we need congressional hearings. She said, no, stop there. State rights. Always start at the state. So we had hearings. We had hearings around the state of Illinois, in Springfield, and East St. Louis, and Carbondale. I mean, we went around the state having hearings until the pandemic came. And when the pandemic hit, I continued to push. But the thing is that we have various models that fit various cultural needs, because each culture is different. Yeah, we're all human and we all bleed red, but our thinking is different, values are different, mores are different. So programs need to be designed around the culture of people's understanding of various cultures. It has to be done, and we could change it if we wanted to. If we wanted to put the effort in, it don't take it. We could change it. I mean, overnight. I mean, perfect example. If somebody would have told you 20 years ago that the law would be enforced for same-sex marriage, you would have said, I don't think so. Well, guess what? They fought. And they got laws that were in their favor. And we had to do the same thing. We had to work towards just laws in our favor. And the first target was always the Black community, but it has boomerang. It's affected everybody. I talked to downtown business people, and half of them, you know, the mentality downtown was every man for himself. And I told many of the downtown business leaders, you're going to look like Detroit pretty soon down here. Oh, they don't like that, but it's coming. You had to listen to people who are in the trenches and who understand solutions. I am a solution-orientated person. That's why I worked to get a bill passed. And I want them to execute this bill, and I just have to continue to educate. And if you all saw my website, one of the first things that you see on that website, the second video you see is April 27th, when the bill was signed by J.B. Pritzker. But yet they tried to continue to sweep it under the rug. I'm not going to let that happen. And so you all had to ask the question yourselves and demand yourselves in terms of, you know, getting the resources to be able to implement the type of we need new creative programs that will help us be a better community. And it can be done. It's not difficult. It's the will to do it.
So Pastor Williams, I know of a number of peace organizations that would definitely love to stand with you in this quest. one of the things that they've been promoting is a new teaching coming to the families, whether it is coming as an online course or coming through the school system, but basically peace schools, teaching the ethics, morals, and values of peace, and instilling an idea into the minds of human beings that we are all here as one humanity, supposed to be living together in peace. And therefore, that at least begins to address what you mentioned about the ethics and the values that people need to have on the inside. Now, the question is, based on what you said about all the institutions actually being violent, how do we change the institutions that create the incentive for violence, such as the lack of opportunities to get basic needs, people stealing because, they're not allowed to work for a living, or, people killing because they are in a state of high stress over fear or anger or whatever the case may be, and don't have anybody to talk to. How do we, and then of course we got the weapons industry that's looking to make a profit off of people who want to use weapons. How do we get our institutions to be in sync with the philosophy of peace so that we can actually make it a reality in our day-to-day living?
By demanding that they do their jobs. Elected officials work for you. You don't work for them. One thing I like about Representative LaShawn Ford, he always says these words: make us do it. You got to make us do our job. Camille Lilly says the same thing. I've heard her say it. Those are the only two elected officials I've ever heard say, make us do it. We've got to make them do it. We've got to make them do it. If we make them do it, they'll do it. But as long as we're passive and sitting by and crying, woe is me, nothing will be done. We must make them do their jobs. Make them do it. I mean,
I think as mothers, as sisters, and as auntie, we need to hold that truth to ourselves. We need to make our sisters, and we need to encourage them. If they can go and do everything else, they got children, they got all of these people, we need to be held accountable. That goes to me. That goes to my heart. I need to be held accountable so that I can hold my aldermen and all of the elected officials accountable. But I need to get inside my own family, inside my own circle, inside my own block, and say the same thing to each and every person that I greet, because I always got people run up on me. So we need to, I like that. I'm glad I heard that. I like that.
Not only that, y'all also understand that we human beings are paradoxical. Human beings are messy creatures, y'all.
Oh, I used to be messy.
Yeah, but some folk never stop being messy. And because you're dealing with this human dichotomy, I mean, you got to almost be a psychiatrist when you're talking to people today. You have to look at people's behavior, their language. Three things about, the three signs of depression is, behavior, language, and you ask people, are you getting enough sleep? And a lot of people are saying, telling me I can't sleep 8 hours anymore. I can't sleep. I wake up at 3, 4 and can't go back to sleep. So this COVID, this lockdown had a tremendous impact on the human psyche. Now we look at the fact that the inflation that's hitting us from top to bottom. We see all the things that's occurring. We see all the things that are occurring right now. And those of us who are healthy, we've got to help other people be healthy. And my thing is to encourage people and to tell people it's important that we be healthy right now. We've got to be healthy.
Well, when you speak of health and you look at mental health, a lot of people who are raising children are not mentally healthy themselves. And I guess that's one of the biggest paradoxes, people thinking that you can create peace by using violence. And one of the things I've been an advocate for years and years and years is changing the way we raise our children. And when you have angry, stressed out parents inflicting violence on children because they're expressing their frustration, and then the children then re-inflicting that violence on their peers. And then as they grow, it gets more deadly. If we can fix the root of the problem, which everybody learning how to live the golden rule, treat others as you wish to be treated, and learning how to raise and guide and train children without inflicting violence, both psychological and physical and mental and spiritual violence upon the children. If we can create the peace in our homes, and if we can teach parents how to do it who don't know how to do it, then maybe there can be a change. But then also there has to be a change in conditions that create the stress on the parents that are raising the children. That constant fear of your very livelihood being taken from yourself, or being put out on the street, or not having food to eat or clothes to wear, or just basic necessities so that you can maintain your health, health care and all those kinds of things. Is there a way, once we change the philosophy of living, that we can then change the institutions that have been supporting violence, as you say? Is there a way to have that transformation?
Well, I'm gonna tell you something. One thing about how I discuss with the legislators, I say, when you first step, education, there should be public service announcements that's going on consistently in terms of addressing what you just said. Every day we are bombarded with somebody's propaganda. Tide versus the other product, a perfect example. And that can be done because it's just simply bringing people together like yourselves who offer solutions, and we're able to put it out there to the masses. It's not difficult. Pritzker could do that right now. A perfect example, after the George Floyd riots, and I keep talking about this great young man because I admire him, Representative Ford, put forth to Pritzker to sign an executive order on rapid relief funding to the Black community. He wasn't talking about giving Black folks checks. He was talking about infrastructure to rebuild the Black community. Pritzker ignored that. I mean, he didn't sign this House Bill 158 with me introducing him. He didn't sing Kumbaya with me because he didn't want to do it. You had to make them do it.
Yeah.
And so you all can know this. It's been 10 years in this state since a citizen helped pass legislation. It's historical. And all I want them to just say, violence was a public health crisis. That's all I want them to say. Say uncle. But then they gave an absorbent amount of money with the bill. Well, what's happening, the monies, the funding for the bill is being retroacted into other things.
So where's that money going to? And is it going to people who need it?
They're paying back bills primarily to hospitals.
Well, the other part of it is, I think that this is an exciting time because I never look at the dark side. I just think about what could happen if God permits me to wake up tomorrow morning. What can I do with this? The other part of it is that you have to be, challenged to do something greater. We talked about Pritzker. We need to be hold ourselves accountable for getting this information out. Sister Naima, I'm glad you're here, and you know that the only way that we can deal with this thing is from sister to sister, from woman to woman, from mother to mother, from auntie to auntie. We got to handle our business, because if we're united out here and they have already got the bill passed, then we got to sound the alarm. We can't just keep sitting here, because although my son is a grown man, I still got to move through these streets. And if we don't help our children, they don't bother me, but who knows, at one time may come about and I'm getting older. I'm 67 years old. I can't move like I used to move, but you ain't gonna challenge me and put your hands on me. But we have to help our people. You know what I'm saying? Because it's us.
Correct.
Now, if they did the paperwork, it's all laid all out. United Church of Christ, they not screaming. Church of God in Christ maybe need to be enlightened a little bit more. They shout up a storm. I shout right with them and pass the information and educate them. So that's my job.
Yeah. Well, the
Thank you for it.
Look, the information is there, ladies. I mean, the
Thank you.
job's been done. A major bill was passed,
Yeah.
and it's up to citizens to I mean,
You said it.
I can only do so much.
You said it.
Y'all, I done what God would have me to do, you know. So I'll move on to the next assignment, but you have to continue. I mean, why are we continuously treading over the same grounds over and over and over and over? But you said something. In a time of crises, there's time of opportunities.
Yes.
And I see opportunities, but you open your eyes up and see. No, everybody ain't gonna see.
Yeah.
But those who see, like-minded people have to share information. Like-minded people have to say, you know, it's about the bigger picture. It is not about me. You know, I'm 67 too, sister, like you. So whatever time I got left on this earth, let me be my best at doing what I do, and that's serving God's people. And this is why I'm running for United States Senator, because if given the opportunity, I wouldn't care if I served one term. I can do a better job than the people up there. I mean, what was January 6th? January 6th in America, it was the day of violence. They attacked the U.S. Capitol. And all they said was violence, 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 violence. But yet, when I called on the President of the United States, I walked with young people. Last year, I walked with young people in a month, this month journey. We walked from Chicago to DC, all over the country. And the first thing everybody told me, it ain't about no economy. I don't feel safe. The number one issue was violence as a public health crisis. And so I called on the president, Mr. President, sign an executive order. You ought to know what January 6th was. Sign an executive order on violence as a public health crisis with a plan of civility. Not difficult. But the people, you know, the beauty of this, that they say, well, you know, this is democracy. No, it's a republic. And the republic is governed by the people. All you do, read the Constitution. But we give our citizens power over to elected officials to do the will of the people, and they make decisions that we don't even know about. We just have to be conscious of what's going on as it relates to our government. It can be better. America's got a long way still to go, but my God, you know, I ain't in 1863, but I know my ancestors and other righteous people sacrificed for me to be here, to be able to be on this gizmo talking to you. A lot of people have sacrificed for all of us to move forward. And we still got some more sacrificing to do to make America a better place.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I live here. I want to make it a better place. Even
Amen.
though I'm a globalist, the world is my home. There's no boundaries, but I'm in real time. I live in the good USA. My ancestors built it for free. I want my reparations.
Mm-hmm. So, Pastor Anthony, for those who have plans or systems or are in place to do training, counseling, guidance, whatever the case may be, can they apply for funds that are now available as a result of the passage of the legislation making violence a public health crisis?
Well, the bottom line is they can go on the website and look and see what's pertaining to that bill. Let me say this about this. They signed the bill, then tried to hide the bill.
Mm.
But you can't hide it because it's documented. You can Google it up. And of course, you know, there's a lot of media information in terms of what I did. There's the April 27th NBC piece that just shows you right there on the spot. I'm not lying. I'm telling you guys the truth. I had a bill passed. It got a lot of money with it, but they swept it under the rug. You know, they swept it under the rug. Look, as much as I love Dr. King, as much as I love Malcolm and a lot of other people, King changed the laws, but he never got no money with the laws.
Mm. Can't enforce it if you don't have money to go with it.
We got money.
Mm-hmm.
We got money. Now, if it's a lie, they told it. They said $38 billion. I didn't write that. They Googled it up. That's what they said. I said, wow.
Well, let's see if we can find some of the money, and then until we find the money, we still need to get the message out. We need to be talking to our people, and we need to tell them to go search this bill and understand the bill. Call us back up if they don't understand the bill. Let's walk through it closely together. How about that? Get that big magnifying glass out at the dollar store, costs $1, so we can make the make the lines big so we can get busy.
You all can always call whoever the chairman of the Black Legislative Caucus is. That's where you start at.
Them your people, aren't they, Naima?
Well, we can always call them up.
I mean, hey, you know what you do? You know what y'all do, Sister Naima?
Yes,
You
sir.
just talk to Camille. That's who you talk.
Have her on
Camille,
the show, yes.
on the representative side, it's Camille Lilly who's the sponsor. State
We'll
Senate
have her
side.
on. Yeah.
So I mean, she's got more. Camille the Sharp. She come out the healthcare industry. So I think if you want some sanity on the issue and some direction, I would talk with Camille Lilly. That's who you all talk to.
Hey, Wanda, I think we need to connect with the NAACP and see what the ladies are talking about, and the AKAs and all the rest of them. Let's just fire up our females. We got some little work to do that's gonna be fun. I like fun. I don't have that many wrinkles in my forehead, so I ain't going there. I'm going to take the message and have some fun with it. How about that? Take it to the stepper sets and see if we can have some fun with it.
Look here, Rose Joshua.
Yeah.
The Southside NW.
Absolutely.
Rose was with me on the journey with
All
this
right,
legislation.
I'm gonna call Rose as soon as we get off the phone. I'm gonna call and tell her I'm coming by our house for an apple and sit down and have this conversation.
But see, as we just, we can't keep. I keep saying this. We keep treading over the same stuff. It's there. So
okay, let's have some fun.
I look at, like you mentioned, the roots of violence, the cause, and the fact that there have been people who have been able to address it, and even with T.O. Hardeman's organization, the violence interrupters, those who would stop conflicts before they erupted into violence, those kinds of on the street, boots on the ground kind of efforts. Do they have access to the dollars that have been, as you've said, been mostly going to maybe pay back hospital bills or whatever, but people who can literally create programs to address those who are about to erupt in violence, help them with their mental health crisis, their emotional health crisis, those who can help with teaching parents or relieving stress of parents, or those who can help children who are exhibiting post-traumatic stress disorder from being exposed to violence. How do we get the money, the resources to those groups that have proven effective in these areas so that they can do the work that needs to be done?
Well, the bottom line is there's too much disconnect here.
So we need to connect the dots. We need to connect.
That's too much. See, here's a perfect example. A Dr. Gary Slocum, who helped organize ceasefire, a South African epidemiologist, says that violence is a disease and a contagion.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Sister Yah Simpson, an epidemiologist, and I had Yah break the science of understanding what this is. I wanted to hear from a Black epidemiologist, not from a white epidemiologist. Gary Slocum has gotten wealthy off the violence and the misery that goes on in the Black community. And he has used, with the problem in Chicago, we have too many mercenaries running around talking about they can stop something and can't throw rice in a wedding. They have not produced anything but conversation.
They get paid.
I produce. I don't get anything. I don't get any grants. Everything is out of my pocket.
Hey, Reverend Williams.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you because our show is coming to a close. But however, we need you to come back, and we need to be held accountable. The three powerful women that you see in here, we need to be held accountable. I love my sisters. We're very, very close, but we need to get to the bottom of it so we can do some with money and that we don't get when we're following it up. Sister Naima, I think it's going to come, but we need to sound this alarm and we need to get ready. But however, we need to close the show now. And Pastor Williams, do you promise you're coming back? We're looking dead in your eyes.
Hey, anything that I can do to serve, I'm humbled to do so. I thank you, great woman, for this opportunity to give insight. And I'll be reaching out to you because I want to close out and get the rest of these petitions and get on the ballot. And then we can really have some fun.
Yeah. All right. So so now we're closing now. This is the Omnibus television station. And we're here on Wednesday nights, and we just promise I'm gonna stay on Phil's back. And I want to thank Phil for calling and following through with this. Sister Naima, if you want to have some closing remarks, we are welcoming you to do that. So we know you got something powerful to say.
Peace is possible, and all we have to do is change the heart, and we can do that together.
That's my sister.